Borderline personality disorder. You have BPD? Do you know somebody with BPD? Does BPD affect your life? Then this video is for you. And you should probably make sure to hit that subscribe button and the notification bell just so you can be updated whenever I make another video discussing BPD, which you want to know about. So go ahead and do that now. Today we're going to talk about the struggle of not freaking out. I don't know a better way of putting it. It's hard to nail it down into one type of term or something, because it's more of it's a collection of things that build up and cause freakouts. Everybody's always asking, how do we stop a borderline from getting to that point where they just go off and rage and all of this? And well, there's a lot of things you have to do. And today I want to talk about some of the things that lead up to this blow up. Maybe some things that we could do, us as borderlines, to maybe prevent it, or at least know the signs that it's coming, that it's going to happen. Maybe for the norms out there, I can give you some advice on how to know when it's time to pack your bags and just take off for a few days. Sometimes that's your best option. There are definitely lose-lose situations that we set up for you where there's no way you're going to win. It's going to turn into what we want it to be. We don't know that we want it to go that route. We don't intentionally set out to manipulate and have this big freak out. That's not our intentions. Now, that being said, of course we do it. We plan it out. It's subconsciously planned out, though. It's that hurt and scared little child inside of us.
And that lost and lonely little girl inside. Lost and lonely what?
That child that was just left alone all the time. For the child that had to teach themselves how to shit. That inner child plans all this out in the background. And then sits back and just watches you just be its little puppet. Do you want to be the puppet of the kid that had to teach themselves to shit? The main point I want to make in this video is how fast we can destroy a relationship. It doesn't take much. Relationships are very fragile. Long-term relationships can be more fragile than you'd believe. I mean, I don't want to bring up... Okay, I do. Let's go ahead and bring up the ex. There's only one that matters, so we don't even need to say their name, because I made a video where I said I was no longer going to mention this person because I was over them, and I am. This is not a, oh, I'm not over them story. This is a, oh, you can be with somebody for a long time and think the relationship is really solid, and it only takes one action to destroy the whole thing. People have probably often wondered, what was the thing, Mr. BPD, that you did that actually made said person leave? They stayed with you for 10 years... and then took off. What did you do? You had to have done something, right? I mean, something had to have happened after 10 years, and I've never really discussed it with anybody, ever. So, if you'd like to know that one, head on over to my Patreon page. I made a separate video discussing what made her leave, what was the final thing that drove Amanda away. You can join Patreon. It's only $1 a month, and you get to see that bonus video. There's a link in the description below. I get a lot of people out there be like, hey, Mr. BPD! Mr. BPD, sir! Do you realize that people with borderline personality disorder can have all kinds of different traits? That some of well, you can't group them into one little category, and that your representation of BPD does not cover everybody. Some people with BPD are just quiet and introvert, and just they cut themselves instead, and other people will shit in your bed. Yeah, I know that. This is always just coming from my point of view, of course. I just don't have to, I don't feel I should illustrate that every time, because it's just like, ugh. There's only a few people out there that get really upset about it, but just don't get upset about it. Take what fits and leave the rest. That's what I always say. If there's one thing I say that is useful to you, then take that and disregard the other 99%. Or not. Or just be mad about it. But there's so much more to be mad about. I know I spent all of my energy trying to not be that person. Not be that person that manipulated, raged for no reason, had the jealousy. I was always trying to be that even mild-tempered, calm person. All my energy went into it. Do you know how effective I was at it? Like 0% effective. I was always being the person I didn't want to be. I was always letting the BPD stuff take over. The BPD thinking rule my actions. I didn't even think about my actions. I'd just react. There was no pausing and waiting and actually running through in my mind what I was about to do. I'd just do it. I'd just react, and I didn't care. I wanted to burn the world down. I still do. That rage is still there. I've just learned to stop and realize that there are consequences for everything. And at the time, when I'm pissed off, I could care less about the consequences. I've somehow managed to figure out a way of stopping it before it gets to that point. Because once I let it go too far, if I see the signs and I don't intervene, I don't do something to get off the road I'm on, once I do freak out, there's nothing that can save me at that point. Once I have lost that control, I'm not going to bring it back. I'm going to burn it all down. And I will not care that I'm doing it. I could give a shit about consequences. I will cut my own throat if it'll go take you out with me. I could care less. And the worse I am, the better it makes me feel at the time. And the rage and the anger, and it is very overpowering. And the only thing that gives it any kind of relief, that kind of eases it off, is doing the most despicable, hurtful, mean things to the person that upsets you. Like I said, there's no stopping it for me once I get to that point. There's a certain point. And I used to always say that too. Every time that we would get into an argument and I would end up actually physically doing something, which is like a boundary that I never wanted to cross. Like, I never wanted to hit the girl I love. That was never my intention. That's never even something I thought about. I constantly thought about, don't hit the girl you love. You love her, don't hit her, you stupid jackass. Hitting the girl you love is counterproductive. I would say that, but I was never like, I really got to go hit my bitch today. Or, I got to go hit my lady today. Never, no. But I would do that. I would get angry enough to do that. And at the time, I would not care that I was doing it. In fact, I would feel that it was deserved. In my mind, I wasn't the one okay, in my brain, she caused it. It was her fault. Had she not pushed me to that point, I would not hit her. Right? Classic abuser shit right there. Afterwards, I would feel like shit. Once I'd calm down, I'd definitely feel bad about it. I'd promise to never do it again, which was an empty promise. You can never promise something if you don't know how to achieve what you're trying to promise. I would always promise that I wouldn't hit her again, but I'd never intended to hit her in the first place. So how the hell can I promise that I'm not going to do it again if I don't even know how I did it in the first place? That is a ridiculous promise. That's a promise that you cannot make or keep. This goes on the other end too. If somebody is promising you something and you have a feeling that they don't know either how they did the first, or make sure they know how to fulfill the promise, is what I'm trying to say. Because people promise shit all the time, but they have no idea of how to do it, and of course they can't keep their promise. Stupid. And it's so simple. Just don't promise shit you can't fulfill. But then again, I wasn't promising because I really meant it. I mean, yeah, I didn't plan to hit her again, but did I know it would probably happen again? Yeah, I mean, it was only logical. I drank like a fish, and, well, I have these anger issues that I couldn't control, and of course it was going to happen again. Duh. Promises were more just try to keep her from leaving, to make sure that, she wouldn't leave. You gotta say something. I mean, just saying I'm sorry is not enough. You gotta, I promise I'll never do it again. And then after you do it again, you're like, I will never do it again. About 400 times, you're like, I'll never do it again. It's like each time it gets less and less of a performance to convey. And soon you're just like, I won't do it again. Fuck. You both know you're gonna do it again at that point. Okay, here's some ways to try to avoid the explosion or the freak out, or at the very least muffle it when it does explode. First off, you got to realize that you have an issue and that you have the issue, not everybody else. That is a hard pill to swallow. That's a tough one. There's believing and knowing that you're a problem and you have a problem, and then there's actually realizing and understanding that it's you that has the issue and the problem. They sound a lot alike, and they even look kind of alike in actions, but they feel different. They feel a lot different. The whole time that I was being such a horrible boyfriend, I knew that I was the problem. I knew that I had issues. I had to. At the same time, I didn't really feel it or realize it and understand it. Like I said, afterwards I would still, in my brain, I would think that she had pushed me to this point of freaking out. No matter what she did, even if she was trying to push me to a point, I should not have allowed it. Like, I should not have allowed her to have that much power over me if she was doing it. Let's say she was the reason why I hit her. She pushed me into hitting her. She knew exactly what she could do to make me snap. I don't believe that. I don't think she was really intentionally doing that. At the time I might have, but I don't now. But for the benefit of this video, let's say she was. I still should not have hit her. I still should not have allowed her to do that to me. Never give somebody that much power over you. Why would you want anybody to have that much power over you? It's very hard to try to pin it down, but yeah, I mean, we can be filled with emotion, but still feel absolutely nothing inside. Yet that other person will give us that thing we're lacking, and that's what makes us not want to let them go. Because living without that could be the most well, probably is the most horrible thing anybody could ever imagine. Just a nightmare, day in and day out, of never feeling anything but rage and anger and every day, and not having anything that can quench that, not having one thing in the entire world that can make that rage subside and go away, and you just want to stab everybody you see in the face. It's important that these people stay in our lives. Because before you freak out, there will be a lot of thoughts that happen. You don't just instantly freak out, even though you feel like you do. It feels instantaneous, but it's not. It's a buildup of little teeny tiny little micro things that happen. Now, if you can realize the thing that's bothering you, the little micro thing, and are able to address it then, before you freak out, you actually have a chance to solve that little problem from happening again. And a lot of these micro things we never discuss. We never tell the other person. We believe that telling them or expressing these feelings are going to make us look nuts. Ask yourself this, if you have BPD. What makes you look more crazy? Telling the person you're with that they're constantly being on their cell phone is making you feel like they're talking to somebody else that's not you when they're spending time with you, and you want to spend time with them. You want the total connection. You don't, but every time they're on the phone, all you can think is these thoughts of, what are they doing on the phone that's going to cause them to leave me? Even if it's just leave me for like 10 minutes. What if they're on the phone with somebody, they're like, oh, I gotta go run and meet this person real quick and come back. They're still leaving. We don't like you to ever leave. And then the paranoia starts, and just, when it would have just been way easier to just say, hey, stop using your phone, and express that. It can be anything. But once you get to the freak out point where you lose it, you're not going to realize that it's this and this and this and this and this and this and this all combined. You're just going to be pissed off with rage that you just cannot control, and you'll have no way of explaining it other than, I just fucking want to kill you. You got to dissect it before it gets to that point. You got to learn to see the things or realize these things that are upsetting you, and then you have to actually have the courage and the know-how and to go into that awkward place of talking about it. It's awkward sometimes to tell people certain things, especially when they're really weird things that like most people wouldn't understand. And then you got to try to make them understand, because believe it or not, I'm going to hit you over this someday if you don't get it. And see, now I said it that way, so now I ruined my whole thing, and it all sounds all aggressive, like I'll beat you, but no, that was just a bad joke. Just forgive me for the bad joke, and just, you know, if you explain to them, we can have this big old fight later over this stupid shit, or we can deal with it now, usually they understand. But if you can get to a point where you're starting to deal with it and you dissect it and you don't explode all the time, and you get used to having conversations with people and going to the awkward places and just being upfront and expressing all your fears and all that crap, you'll find yourself in a position where you're no longer feeling all the BPD symptoms, because you deal with them before they stack up, before they become something. And when you do start to feel them, you know how to address the situation. And after a little bit, it gets harder to identify with the whole BPD thing, because you're not feeling it as often. When you have BPD, though, especially at the beginning of trying this, everything in your head is going to tell you you're crazy, right? You're crazy for trying this. It's not going to work. And your brain is going to try to convince you. Its defenses are going to come up. It does not want, in a weird way, you don't want to get better. Your existence kind of relies on the BPD a lot, and getting rid of the BPD will change who you are. Therefore, there's this self-defense mechanism that kicks in that will try to sabotage any attempts to try to change things, even though, I mean, you know that it's for the best, but your subconscious doesn't, and it wants to protect you, and it will do some crazy shit to protect you. Fortunately, norms, this all relies on the BPD person doing something that is very uncommon for somebody with BPD to be able to actually accomplish. I believe the only reason that I ever was able to actually do this and start realizing what was going on was because, I don't know, my whole core beliefs were shattered. Everything that I thought I knew was turned upside down. It was such a big event. It was so catastrophic to my ego that it just shattered everything. I stopped thinking of myself as a person, or feeling like a person, and started just feeling all the emotions, and then trying to figure that out, and realizing that it's complicated. If you want to know what I'm just get to a point where your whole existence is just shattered, your whole sense of self, who you believe you are, what you believe the world is, what you believe, everything you believe in is just total shit, and you realize that, and you realize also that everything you ever could believe in is also bullshit. So it's bullshit on both ends of it's all bullshit, nothing matters, it's all crap, but, you know, at the same time, you got to deal with it, you got to live with it, cuckoo, 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 and then piece it all back together, and you'll be able to understand what I'm talking about. Right? Easy. Norms, what the hell can I say to you? Well, you're already, and depending on how long you've been with somebody with BPD, in a relationship with somebody with BPD, even if it's just a friendship, you're probably, most likely, at a point already where you're walking on eggshells, where you don't feel like you can do anything right, therefore you second guess what you're doing, and then you find out that when you second guess what you're doing, when you do what you think the person with BPD wants you to do, bam, that's when you get just out of left field, they seem to go off and lose it. Even if it's stuff they've told you, like if you do this, then, you know, we'll have a good time. Avoid this and this, and everything will be fine. So you avoid this and this, and the fact that you avoided those pisses them off. Sound familiar to anybody? I was really cocky about that too. Like, does it sound familiar? And everybody out there is just like, I have no idea what the fuck he's talking about. I'll have no way of knowing. So here's my advice to you, norms. Remember, I said there's lose-lose situations. That's a guarantee, right? I can promise you that that's going to happen. I still put lose-lose situations with people. It's just mine are not as severe as they used to be. I also catch myself doing it. So normally when I put somebody in a lose-lose, I let it play out, but I just don't feel the emotion behind it when it ends, because I know what I'm doing. Therefore, at the point where like normally the freak out would happen, I then explain to them the lose-lose situation they were in, and I rewind it backwards for them so they can see that there was no way they were getting out of it. At this point is when I set the trap. I tell them what point like I started the trap, what point they stepped into the trap and there was no getting out of it, and then what point I actually clinched the trap and got them. I find that helps me to not do lose-lose situations on people when I can trace it back like that. And yeah, they love it. I'm sure they love that. You got to have the difficult conversations, and that's one of the difficult conversations that I choose to have with the people around me. I want them to know what I'm capable of. I want them to know that I will put them in situations like that on purpose. I mean, subconsciously on purpose. And there are times when I might not catch it. Sometimes I catch it later, and then I got to go back and apologize, and then we run it back. The more light you can shine on it with everybody, the better, is what I feel. Now, norms, this doesn't help you, but here's my advice to the norms. Since it's a guarantee that you're going to be put in lose-lose situations, stop caring. Stop caring. Nothing you do is going to stop the inevitable. Therefore, do what you think is right. Stop walking on eggshells. Be yourself. Be more assertive with your point of view. And that might actually make it better. Because the more resistance you give them, the more likely they are to... How do I put it? There's got to be a good way to put this. The more you allow them to do, the more they'll do. You got boundaries, right? There's boundaries. If they're changing the way you do things, they know that. And there's a sick, weird kind of like power thing over it. And for some reason, when we have BPD, we think if we can control people, that they'll never leave. So the more control we have over you, the better we feel. And the more control we want over you. So if you allow it, we will continue to keep taking more and more. It's never going to get to the point where we stop wanting to take control. We're never going to be like, this is a good control level, and then everybody's happy. No, we'll just keep taking it and taking it and taking it. And the more we can take, the more we want to take, and the easier it is to take because you allow it. Yeah, just don't do it. And if you have done it today, stop doing it and get your control back. That's really the best advice I've got for norms on this one. Unfortunately, it's mostly the person with BPD that has to do stuff. I could try to tell you what to do when things are leading up to it, if you get the feeling that they're going to have an explosion or something. Unfortunately, any advice I give you is not going to work, because remember the lose-lose? It's a lose-lose. It's going to happen. There are some things I could say that might diffuse it, but I don't know 100%, so I don't want to give that kind of advice. I would have. A couple years back, I would have been naive enough to think I could give that advice, but I'm learning. Mr. BPD learns too. No, the best advice I can give you is be yourself, be authentic. They know when you're not, and it makes things worse. No matter what, I think it makes things worse. Or just get the hell out of the situation. There's always, you can just leave. Sometimes that's the best option. There are people with BPD that cannot be, well, I'm not going to say they are unwilling to change. I was one of them, amazingly, until it was like an amazing shattering of my existence. I should not be living the life I am. I should not be doing these types of videos. It's completely bonkers, and took the oddest thing to make it happen. Maybe that can happen for everybody with BPD. I'm still trying to figure out how to maybe recreate it so that maybe I can cure everybody. I'm working on it. That's all we need. Mr. BPD's cure for BPD. It'll be some weird elixir. Until next time, keep on keeping on.